Welcome to another episode of Pinsky Law Presents. My name is Brad Pinsky, and I am going to be your host on this very important topic. Why fire districts are spending way too much money on bond and bonding services. Now, let me give you a little warning before we get too far. Your phone's going to be ringing off the hook, as I'm sure mine will be, because I am going to upset people. Not so out of my character, I guess, but I am going to upset a lot of people who make a lot of money that you are paying them for absolutely no good reason. So your taxpayers will be the ones who thank you after you listen to this quick presentation. So be prepared. Your in-house attorney might be the one to get upset. I can promise you that your financial rating service is going to get upset. Your bond counsel firms are going to be furious. Why? Because we're going to save you tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars. Now, what are we talking about? Well, let me explain. You are likely going out to public bid with every single bond you offer. And if you are, you're wasting a ton of taxpayer dollars. The law in New York State is that bonds under $5 million do not need to be publicly bid. Instead, they can be privately placed. Let me explain that. When you go through the public bidding process, you get financially rated, cha-ching, cha-ching. You go through a process where you put notices out in papers and you prepare stacks and stacks of documents, and you pay attorneys to spend a lot of time and effort on creating these huge stacks of documents, which you do not need to spend in a privately placed bid. Most importantly, you are paying a company to file annual reports, and I'm seeing expenses of $1,000 a year. $1,000 a year. Think of that. If you have a 30-year or 25-year bond, you are paying $25,000 or $30,000. You do not need to pay when you have a bond that's less than $5 million. Now, this wasn't always the case. In fairness, if you think, wait a minute, I thought the limit was $1 million. It used to be, but many years ago, the state, realizing that you can save a ton of money, they increased the threshold to $5 million, where you can now take a private placement bond and avoid publicly bidding. So this isn't Brad Pinsky saying this is a great idea, even though it is Brad Pinsky saying this is a great idea. This is New York State, who said we want you to be able to privately place bonds. Why aren't you being told about it? Because people are making a ton of money off of you, and you don't need to spend it. So as you cross $5 million, look, you got to do it. And as you get up to those numbers, maybe, going out to public bid is not a bad idea. But it does require a lot of time, effort, money, and delays the bond process considerably for the time it takes for you to get your money. Now, bond counsel fees, in addition to all of this, those could be 1%, 1.5%, 2%, whatever of the bond. But that's just part of the expense you're going to incur. For us, I can't speak to other attorneys who do private placements, but what I can tell you, we charge no more than 1%. But that's for everything, because we don't put you through the financial rating service process or the public bidding process, right? We might help you bid your truck, but you don't need to bid the bond, and you don't have annual financial reports because they're not required. You will save a ton of money. Again, our fee is no more than 1%, but again, if you took a $4 million bond, we're not going to charge you 1% of that. That's crazy. You don't need to pay that. So bond rates are way cheaper. So they're faster also, right? So understand that the bond process to publicly bid takes a lot of extra time, perhaps months and months extra. You don't need to waste all that time. What happens in time? Interest rates go up, and that's what we're seeing now. Every month you wait from getting your money in your bank account from the bond, the rates are going to go up. And I will tell you dollar for dollar, after you take in all the costs of a private placement bond versus a publicly bid bond, private placements are going to be way cheaper. And yes, you're going to hear over 5 years, 10 years, you can save way more. I don't think so. Maybe on the interest rate, maybe, but not when you put in all of the other expenses. Your taxpayers will save a ton of money. and the bond results are the same, except that you're not doing financial reports for $1,000 a year every year. All right. So look, and if you want to, don't take my word, go get interest rate quotes. You can go Bank of Greene County. Now, let me just say, they don't even know I'm doing this. I have no financial relationship whatsoever, except that I work with them a lot, as well as other banks. But they appear to have the cheapest rates, and their rates are insanely good. And they don't require you to get financially rated. You save that money. If you do get financially rated and you want to go through that process, I'm not discouraging it. I'm just saying it's not necessary. May you get better rates? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But again, you're going to save so much time and money with a private placement bond. That's why New York State allows you to go up to $5 million. Again, not Brad's idea, New York State's idea, but I'm the only one telling you about it. So you still need a bond resolution, right? And the bond resolution has to have certain information. My strong suggestion, whoever serves as your bond counsel, have them do the bond resolution. Why? Because if the bond counsel doesn't like the resolution, you start the process over. And I have, unfortunately, rejected resolutions that other attorneys have done when I don't think it meets the requirements of the law, when I was not comfortable writing a bond on somebody else's resolution. Now, again, our 1% is the whole thing, right? It's all one fee, so that's up to you if you want to use another attorney, right? And again, you don't even have to use us. Find another attorney who does private placement. We've just been doing it for more than 2 decades. So understand also that your period of bonding, it can't be longer than what's called the useful life of the object. So let's talk about vehicles, for example. A vehicle that's more than $50,000, you can bond up to 20 years. And for things like aerials and, really expensive pumpers perhaps and RPs and such, heavy rescues, maybe that's what's happening. You want to go up to 20 years. We're seeing a lot at 5, 10, 7, 15 years, whatever. So bank rates are better when the term's shorter, but you can go up to 20 years for a vehicle that's more than $50,000. And compare the rates. You can get a whole bunch of different rate quotes. And that's the other thing I really like. You can get rate quotes from banks. Now, if you go through bidding, you got to get a whole bunch of, bids, and you bid the 5, bid the 10, bid the 15, bid the 20, and it takes so long to decide and get your results back with the bidding, and it's expensive. So why not just go for the private placement bond when you're less than $5 million? Again, you still have to get approval of the voters, and I just want to throw something out there. So we all know you have to get the approval of the voters for bonding. It's important to talk about leasing, municipal leasing, installment purchase agreements just for a little bit. I want you to understand, an installment purchase agreement is not a lease, and there's no term called municipal leases in the law. That doesn't exist. The only terms are lease or installment purchase agreement. What's the difference? You have to know. It's very simple. An installment purchase agreement is any agreement with the lender, the bank or whoever, where you, at the end of the term, only owe like $1 or some nominal payment, right? So at the end of your 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, whatever, if you only owe $1 and then you can buy out the vehicle, that's an installment purchase agreement, not a lease. A lease, a true lease, right, which doesn't require voter approval, which is why all these companies are saying, oh, no, it's a lease. It's a lease. It's not a lease if it's a buyout for $1. A true lease does not require voter approval. What does a true lease have that an installment purchase agreement doesn't? It doesn't have a nominal buyout. At the end of a true lease, if you want to buy the vehicle, like a Chiefs car, maybe it's 20, 30, 40% you have to pay, not like $1 or $2. So again, installment purchase agreements got to get a vote. Now, why do I say that? It's the same process, but I got to tell you, installment purchase agreements, always, in my experience, way more expensive than bonds. Bond rates are way better, and the process is exactly the same. That's why some of these, I'm not saying they're being unscrupulous, but they're not being maybe well-informed. They're telling you that, oh, it's just a lease, you don't have to go to bid. Or you don't have to go bid for a lease, but you don't have to go for a vote. And that's not true, right? That's not true. An installment purchase agreement, you got to get voter approval, and the rates just are not as good as bonds. So I'm not saying don't do them. I'm just saying I think you should look. But bonding in a private placement is faster and quicker, and you still need voter approval anyway. So bond votes, just quickly to throw it up in front of you. Look, you got to be very specific. This is why you really should have your bond counsel, whoever that is, prepare the resolutions, or at least have them review what your your in-house counsel did, or your main attorney has done. At least have them all get so they agree on it. Because if you don't get it right, when it comes to the bond counsel time to sign all the paperwork, if it's me, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you didn't get it right. We got to start over. So let's get it right from the beginning. It's important to get it right. You can't dabble in this stuff. You'll mess it up. And the law is so confusing with regard to fire district votes. There's too many statutes that, frankly, just conflict with each other, and they're not well written. You can't dabble in this type of stuff. Okay, so just so you know, for a bond vote, you got to publish the notice of the special election or the election within 27 to 34 days of the vote. Then you have it. The notice has to go to the town, has to be put on the town's website, has to be put on their signboard. After the vote, hopefully it passed. You have 72 hours to certify the election. And then your secretary, by the bond counsel, should be given what's called a 20-day estoppel notice. And that's really important to you because what it does is it cuts the time that somebody can sue and challenge the bond from 4 months down to 20 days. So if you add it up, 34 plus 20, 54 days, you could have your money in 54 to 55 days from the time you publish the referendum. Now, let me just throw out, if you're doing something like building a building or something that involves the environment, you may have to comply with seeker, different lecture, different issue, but from day one, count 54 days, you could have your money in 54 days. That's a big deal when interest rates are skyrocketing. So if I can help you out with any of this, even if I could just give you some free advice, I'm more than willing to do that. Everyone around New York State knows I'm happy to do that. If we can serve as your bond counsel, we've been doing this for decades. We will save you tons of money. We would certainly love to work with you. We will work with your attorney. We don't have to be your attorney. We can be the special counsel and work with you only on bonds. We also are very good at writing bid specs and doing the contracts. And you can still use your other attorney for the day-to-day stuff. But when it comes to bidding and bonding and financing, this is really where we have significant decades worth of experiences. So I look forward to seeing you the next time on Pinsky Law Presents.